Hi, welcome to Daddy O Draws. This is the fourth episode, and I wanted to start running today. So I've already drawn our happy face, saying, "Hey, welcome to the channel. I'm happy to be here, just like I hope you're happy to be here." So one of the things I try to do here is, as you can see on the underlines here, so anything that would be below, I've drawn a little darker. So I'm just trying to use some of the things we talked about in the last episode to sort of imply it. Like his top lip is a bit darker, his underside of his chin is a bit darker, the underside of his nose is a bit darker. These things help kind of imply an underside. You may also have seen that I drew some cylinders here, and so this is what we're going to be talking about today: is putting things in front of things. It's going to be a very early approach to talking about perspective. And so hopefully you keep drawing your volumetric shapes, your cubes, and stretching those cubes out into being, you know, tall, skinny rectangles. Because this is, if you like drawing Spider-Man or any superhero, then you're going to be drawing a lot of buildings. Um, or these can be spaceships. It can be anything. But you need to be able to show in your drawing if something is in front of something else. So there's a couple of things that you need do to be able to do that. And it'll take some practice because you have to train your brain to treat this page as if you're looking into another room or into another place where our brains see things in 3 dimensions. So I'm not going to be drawing perfectly. I want to draw quickly, and I'll try and be as accurate as I can, but there's a lot of information to cover here, and I'm not sitting directly in front of my page. I'm sitting back, so it's going to be hard to convey some of this stuff 100% accurately. But that's just something I'm going to have to work around for future videos. Okay, so one of the first things you can do when you're looking at it is, if we're looking at these two cylinders, we can see that this one, it looks to be directly beside this one based on the ground plane that we have drawn. Okay, so this one is bigger than this one. Even though you can't see it, I kind of have drawn a grid here in my head. There's a grid here that sort of says, hey, these things are sitting on this surface. And I have enough experience that I can see that. And with experience, you'll get there too. Um, so then one of the things that we did is, we're not drawing perspective. You can do these grids if you want. This is a very simple trick for, seeing something in perspective. But we haven't talked about that enough yet. So if you want to try throwing grids down to get a sense of an object sitting on object, by all means, go practice with it. Fool around with it, see what happens. All I can do is encourage you, because that's all art really is just trying things out, experimentation. So through this, we know that this is the same size as this. But if I draw the same cylinder, or a similar cylinder. Gee, that's hard to say. Um, say that 5 times fast in the comments. You can do that. Okay. Another thing. Actually, we'll do this part first, and then I'm gonna go back, talk about it. So I have this cylinder here and this cylinder here. But if I do this, right, kind of, now I've pushed it behind there. It appears more volumetric, even more volumetric than just the cylinder alone. And one of the things you can do to make something appear behind something else is you can go, see, I've made a mistake there. Remember we talked about ellipses, and when they're open too much, they can appear to change the entire perspective. This one is too open. So I'm trying to match it a little more to that. We don't worry about mistakes, especially in these kind of practice phases. We draw things and we understand that mistakes are going to be part of it. And you just go and you fix it. If this got too messy, I would just go and draw it again here. Back to my point. So now this, you can tell that this is behind this and it's the same size. And we're working as if we're looking at the top of this. So we're not using perspective, we're just using the same exact angle. But if I draw the cylinder again, and I'm going to go back now. I mentioned I was going to talk about something else. See what I'm doing here? I'm drawing the ellipses, right? And I'm drawing what's called drawing through. I'm drawing as if you can see the back edge of this ellipse, right? Or like I did with this grid, I drew through it. I just drew the lines right down there, so that I'm not trying to do something like, draw a line up here and then trying to match it. Oh, it didn't work. Oh, it didn't work. So, you don't want to stress yourself out. Just draw straight through. Be light with your touch. Nice light touch. And then you have it come through and it's accurate to the far side. So because this is going to become important with perspective. So if I'm drawing, I just draw right through the object. My perspective lines are being projected. Now, these are maybe a little bit too dark, especially for early stage drawing. So even later, you may not be able to see that. And that's fine. But it's there. Believe me, I'm not just fooling you. So that same concept of drawing through works with everything, especially in your early stages. So I've drawn this. But what happens if I take this same cylinder and put it up here? Let's draw through. And then draw through again. So yeah, it doesn't matter. I don't know if you can see it, but it's showing up inside the other cylinder, but it won't matter. Only because now I can, in my head, I know up here in my brain that this is a full cylinder. And this is going to become important even later on when we start to talk about drawing the figure, drawing like your little mannequins that you use to do that. So now that that's done, I will go in again and I'll harden up the lines that I really want to bring attention to. So, we talked about how to do a nice edge on the cylinder, right? And then this is the underside, so I'm gonna give it a little bit of mustard. Throw a little mustard on the bottom. Put some weight into the pencil. I'm gonna do it again over here, right? I don't need to draw through now because I've already drawn it. I have my train tracks, my guide, and that's all you need. So now because of that, I've got these cylinders, but look how it changes, even though I'm implying that they're the same size. What happens? What is your brain saying when you look at this? Even though we're not using perspective, okay? Maybe you'll agree with me that this looks like our camera is a little lower. I'm looking at this, and maybe this one's a little higher. I'm looking at it. So it's faking perspective, and that's kind of why we're not touching on perspective yet. We're trying to mess around with your ability to visualize things on a natural level. When I used to work in the art industry, I did a lot of perspective work, and you could go in and you can use the whole perspective system if you wanted, but it ended up being time consuming. So you had to be able to look at a drawing, look at something, and just understand how it was going to appear in the final image without getting crazy with your perspective. So we've done this and this. And another trick for making things appear in front of things is we take something. I'm going to zoom in. So let's go. Whoop, everybody zoom in with me. This is the side of the cylinder. Okay. Let's just go a nice big circle and a circle. I'm using an old comic book technique. This is our zoom in. Pretty high tech, All right, so this is our zoom in. This is the side of the cylinder. Okay. One thing that's really important when you're drawing something in front of something else is draw the letter T Something, especially when you're just using line work. So the letter T, I'm kind of cheating it a bit right now because I'm using this only as an example. I would still draw through from my cylinder lid, top, whatever, the minor axis, if we're going to get really technical, of my cylinder. So just in case anybody's curious what I mean by that, when you draw a cylinder, right, you have your axes, you have your major axes, which is this, and your minor axes, which is this. So remember we talked about dividing them. I don't need to do that as much. Probably should be doing that for you guys just so you can see how it's done. But you want even on all sides. Anyway, I digress from that. Back to my point is, I'm going to zoom in, back to the zoom mode. You want to draw the T. Anything that's in front of something else, you want a nice, clean intersection. And sometimes you're going to get into line weight. So something in front of something else is going to be slightly heavier. And I'm ghosting nice and light, and then I go in with the proper line. Okay? This is how you make something look like it's in front of something else. That's just 1, 2, 3 lines. Well, unless you count my handy little shading. I'll do it over here so we're even. But that's how something appears in front of something else. These are how you begin the early stages of showing depth. That's what these underlines are. That's what these lines in front of these lines are, and the very simple shading that we did. So another trick you can do to make something appear in front of something else. Let's go back to, you know what? Let's get fancy. We're gonna throw caution to the wind here. We're gonna use a sphere. Okay. So I've drawn a sphere, sort of. Doesn't need to be perfect. That's the whole thing. Exercise is doing it right, but also being happy with your mistakes. So I've drawn one sphere. And I'm going to say there's another sphere over here. And when we get into perspective, we're going to be talking about how this sphere and this sphere have a third brother or sister, and that one is way back here. Now, we can't really imply that very clearly because we're not using perspective. There's nothing to indicate size or anything like this, but I'm just telling you that one's really far away. Does that help? Probably not. So what you can do is you draw your sphere. All right. We've got our techniques of these things. What you do, I'm going to clean this up a bit because that's important, is draw the sphere. Draw very light and a little bit further back. Even tuck it in behind the first one. You start to immediately see it feels like it's behind and further away. Or you can, if you want a different camera angle, you can go in and you can draw the same sphere, draw it through. Right? Don't forget your T. I don't mean the kind that's nice and warm. I mean the T that joins. And then I've actually made a, well, I don't know if it's a mistake, but I wasn't thinking as much as I should have. This is the same value, which we're going to be talking about values soon, as this, as far as the darkness of the line goes. So it kind of gets lost. So now we're going to go back in, and it's no trouble. We're gonna fix it. If I have to draw it again over here, I'll draw it over here. So we talked about some simple shadows, right? Well, how else can we make this look like it's, well, this is behind this? Well, let's use our simple one we talked about, one line. And we know that this one here and this one here are supposed to be further back. Well, we're going to draw the same line because the light would be the same. But look how much lighter that one is. Now, hopefully it barely shows up. And I'm going to push this again with the darkness. I'm going to go dark, 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 and then I'm going to go nice and light. I'm going to lighten it up as I go back. Because this is getting into a concept of shadow and stuff. We'll be talking about bounce light and ambient light and stuff like that. But for right now, this is a simple way to do it. Nice and dark at the edge of your shadow, which is when it's first starting, and then get a little bit lighter and a little bit lighter as you go along. So I'm going to do that over here, but I am not, I think you know where I'm going with this, going to go quite as aggressively. And then I'm going to throw in, and we talked about simple shadow. I'm going to do that. drawing at a funny angle here, so this is probably starting to look a little bit like a potato chip instead of an actual shadow. And then using the same idea of the T, I'm going to draw this directly into the side and try and make them clean. This is for drawing. When we get into things like painting and stuff like that, that's going to be very different. Right now, we're worried about the clarity of the image. You can even do other things like, and I think we talked about it, pull the line up a bit. Here's my kneaded sticky eraser we talked about. See, look, get to see it in action. So now that, see how that's pulled that up, the line weight has made the light come up. And then I'm going to do the same thing here. This is supposed to be further back, but it's, just using line weight and the T, this feels further behind it. And we haven't used any fancy perspective. We haven't used any of the systems that would do that. The only system we've used are systems we learned in our first 3 episodes: lines, shapes, volume, and some very simple shading. Those 3 things alone, well, I guess 4 things, they will carry you far. And that's why I encourage you to just draw these shapes, draw them all the time. I still do it. I fill pages and pages with shapes. And the reason for that is you're improving your hand-eye coordination. You're improving your mind's ability to turn these shapes around in your head. I can tumble this sphere all around in my head all day long, which, if you follow my meaning, is absolutely ridiculous because the ball is the same on all sides. But a cube, I could take this cube and I could turn it, right? Because I understand how a cube looks in my head. I've turned cubes around. Where is it? There we are. Here, Morty. Can I borrow that? Thanks. I've taken these cubes, and as I said, I turn them and I look at them. How does it look on all sides? How does one face, how big is this face compared to this face when I'm rotating it, when I'm looking at it from different angles? And I do that for all kinds of things. You do it with a cylinder, you do it with anything. So draw shapes. If you're drawing somebody's, like we have our Mr. Happy here, well, I've drawn this line here. There's a T, okay, for his ear. There's one over here. You do the same thing with a neck. Like a neck disappears behind a jaw. Look at that. You have the intersections. That's how you get something to look like it's in front of something else. So this is going to be an important thing to practice. I'm turning this guy into a muscle man, it appears. I didn't mean to do that. Let's give him a workout shirt. Let's make him an old-fashioned, old-timey muscle man. That means he's got a big arm, but he's not really all that strong. Well, maybe he is. We're not going to worry about how strong he is. We're just going to draw him because he's fun. All right, so we're going to draw a forearm. Give him one of those silly dumbbells. All right. I think now we've come so far, we might need to give him the silly mustache. All right. All right, time for the silly mustache. Here we go. I believe they were striped. Let's give them some stripes. Okay. Anyway, there's a lot of things happening here where this is in front of this, this is in front of this, this is in front of this. Now, this is because I've studied these volumes, and I understand that an arm and a forearm, these are cylinders. They're kind of cylinders, or they are kind of like a box like this. You can use either one, but I understand how that works. So at the end of the day, these are things that we're going to be talking about. Things in front of things. This is very early perspective. And this is my hope, is that you can kind of learn to see this stuff before we get into the math of perspective. It's a lot of fun, and this will build your drawing skills more than anything else as far as understanding the structure of things and how to break them down. So, because we've been talking about volumetric shapes, if you want to draw a car, well, what's a car? Well, an old car anyway is, a couple of boxes, and plus this is going to be a bit of our cartoony car. This is not a cartooning course, but cartooning is a style. It's a style choice. And then, we talked about cylinders. Well, we're going to send a cylinder across the way. I might do another short video before the 2-week period, just drawing something using the basic shapes. If anybody has anything that they want to see me draw, then by all means put it in the comments, and I'll try and draw it for you. I have some people that have joined the Discord that are really talented and doing the work, and it's a lot of fun seeing what people are doing, and I hope you decide to join too. Anyway, so these are cylinders. 1, 2, 3 cylinders. There's one. There is going to be one over here, but this is where drawing through comes in. All right, and not as important that we see it, but it is important that we know it's there. Okay, so now I've drawn, I don't know, a Buick or something, or maybe a Rolls Royce. Let's put a little triangle on the front. So triangle, square, square, all right, not even a square, cylinder, cube, 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 kind of a pyramid or a cube cut in half. This is where you shape your shape molding is going to be important later on. So we're not going to talk about it today, but that's going to be doing things like taking this cube and dividing it in half, and then what does it look like? How do you make that look like it's in like? So I would take this, draw a line, right, and now I got a wedge. Go in and erase it. Up, 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 up. It's gonna be a little harder to do the inner one. Didn't really think about it, but this is kind of spontaneous. Most of my videos are spontaneous and unscripted. So I hope you still find them entertaining despite the ridiculousness and me bouncing all over the place. There we go. So now I've drawn a wedge, and that's all this is. And so you can do that with any shape. You can cut it and change it. We take this cylinder, we chop it. Well, that's what that would look like if we were to like chop it with a samurai sword, and then it would slide off all cool and everything like they do in the samurai movies or animes. It would just go shling like this, and then this would fall off. Anyways, I digress. Go back to our car. These things are round, so I tend to just make them sort of like a sphere when I'm drawing silly little cars. I'll put a picture of a car right here that I drew recently. That's just silly and quick. I did it in probably 20 minutes with a friend of mine when we were drawing together, and it was just using basic shapes. So yeah, anyway, I'm really glad you guys came by today, and I hope it was relaxing and inspiring, and you pick up your pencils sometime today, tomorrow, or the next couple of days with the hope to, put a couple marks on the page. That's all that really matters, is that you're taking the time to put marks on the page, because that's how you're going to improve. That's how you're going to, feel proud of yourself for stuff you've done. And I have a close friend who's recently been drawing, and some of the stuff he's been producing is very good, and he's proud of his work, and it makes me super proud of him and super proud to just even be part of his experience. So I highly recommend just getting some pen, paper, chalk, burnt stick, whatever you got. Put it to paper and draw. It's going to be good for you. I'm not saying it's always good, because there's always going to be frustration when you're learning something new. But beyond that, get out there and draw. Have fun. Take a fancy car somewhere. And thanks for coming to Daddy O Draws. Hope that you enjoyed it. And if you learned something today, that's great. And if speed of this kind of video isn't for you, that's okay. There's lots of other good YouTubers here that can teach you a ton of things. And if you ever feel like relaxing, coming and just hanging out, listening to me talk about art, or at least my opinions on art, then you're always welcome. So thanks for coming by, and maybe we'll see you in the next one. Take care.